Hi, welcome to this edition of Eonan's Edge. Today we're going to be doing a general review of compact pocket knives. These are just the knives that I currently carry or have carried. They're not all the small knives that I own, but it's kind of a good cross-section of the knives in my compact selection. The knives are arranged from left to right, from least expensive to most expensive, and we'll go ahead and start with this Gerber. So the first knife is a Gerber Paraframe. It's a non-assisted opening knife. It uses a combination line lock, frame lock. It is a 420 stainless blade with a stainless skeletonized frame, metal clip, partially serrated, flat grind knife. I carried this knife a ton in one of my old jobs. As you can see, the clip's pretty beat up and scratched up on it. It does a good job of cutting. It also has decent serrations. These have been resharpened by me a few times. And it's a pretty good size handle. You can get all four of your fingers on this knife in hammer grip position. So not a super compact knife. If you can get a good purchase on the scales or grips of the knife with all four fingers, I would say that is definitely a plus. With that being said, there's a couple things I don't like about the knife. The 420 HC steel, stainless steel, is not super good at edge retention. This knife has been sharpened so many times, but it does sharpen really easy, so that's not such a big issue. I don't like the fact that the thumb studs on this knife are so wide. A lot of times this knife would catch on my fingers or scrape the skin of my hands when I stick my hands in my pockets to get keys or other things out. And I just feel like that these thumb studs are huge. They did not need to be designed that large on this knife. One other ergonomic thing that some people with smaller fingers have complained about on this knife is that if you have small fingers, sometimes you can, possibly get them in there and touch on the blade and cut yourself. I've never had that happen with me. However, some reviewers of this knife have said that. And my number one issue with this knife, and the reason I don't carry this knife anymore, is if you look carefully in here, you can see that it uses Delrin washers. And these little Delrin washers on each side, there you go, you can see them there, they're white in color. My first Gerber Paraframe, both of these washers cracked and broke, and so the knife was useless. Gerber did replace the knife, so this is my second one. I haven't broke this one, but this is not a heavy use knife. This is not something that you're going to be doing very much prying or putting very much torque on. It's just not going to hold up to that kind of abuse. So the second knife that I'm going to review today is the Kershaw Volt II. This is a speed safe knife. It's an R.J. Martin design. It is made in China, so it uses the 8CR 13 MOV knife steel. I really like this knife for a lot of reasons. It became and is still one of my favorite inexpensive compact pocket carry knives. So you've got a nice flat grind here, a good amount of blade, fine edge blade material. You've got some serrations here, which are great. There's jimping up here. There's this great thumb position without being too obtrusive. You can even slide over the top and move to a secondary grip from saber to, say, a supported grip like Filipino. And that puts your thumb right over the serrations. So if you're cutting with this knife, you get a really good purchase. It has a great handle as far as size. You can get all your fingers on it. And if you look at the texturing on it, it's got all these little like pyramids, these little triangles. So it really does have a lot of cool design features. You can change the clip so you can make it tip up to tip down. It's only right hand carry. Great engagement here. You can see how much engagement there is on the lock. And again, it's just a really solid knife. I've really beat the heck out of this knife over the last 4 years or so, and it has just held up amazingly. I mean, this knife is in great shape. I've cut so many things with this blade. This satin blade finish is really nice. So again, this is the Kershaw Volt II. It's a really good knife. It's great in your pocket. It's not very expensive and a really solid choice if you're looking for a compact carry knife. Next, we're going to move on to the Kizer Lieb. So this knife I bought specifically because I wanted a really nice gentleman's looking knife that I could carry in my pocket when I'm dressed up or when I don't necessarily want to carry a bigger, larger knife. It has a very slim profile. Kizer's a great brand. It deploys perfectly every time. N690 blade and frame. All of the craftsmanship in this knife is superb. Everything about this knife is amazing. There are no imperfections to it. It looks great. It functions great. It's super, super sharp. You can shave the hairs off your arm with this quite easily. It deploys nicely. I love the fact that they did small things like they put this nice little blue anodized ring around the pivot. You can see the texturing on the G10 handles. Again, a great little knife. If you want something that's minimally invasive in your pocket or your belt or whatever, this is a great knife. You can only get 3 fingers on it, but again, it's very sharp. It's not going to be used for heavy duty work. This is a going out knife when you want to be able to carry a pocket knife at all times like I do, but you don't want a bulky knife in your pocket. So Kizer Lieb, great little knife. Now I'm going to get to a knife that's probably been reviewed hundreds, if not thousands of times on the internet. This is the Kershaw Leak. So I have 2 versions here. I have the standard and I have the nicer version, the carbon fiber version here, which is the one I'm showing you right now. So this one obviously has carbon fiber handles. It has a nicer blade on it. It uses a flat grind, flat edge. There's a tiny, tiny bit of taper right here at the end. This one uses Cruciable's CM154 blade steel. USA made, both of them are. This is a Ken Onion design knife. It doesn't have a deep carry pocket clip. However, it carries really nicely in your pocket. There's not only this little bit of the knife that sticks out the top right here. There's just this little section. The speed safe makes it deploy great. I know some people don't like assisted open knives. I've never had a speed safe knife ever open in my pocket. I've never had any assisted knife open in my pocket, but the speed safes especially. The torsion bar that they put in here underneath the handle makes it almost impossible to deploy this knife without pressing on the flipper tab. And again, this knife is very popular. Lots of people have owned this. It's a very simple design, but very elegant. It has jimping here for your main grip positions. Easy to slide your hand forward. Blade width is pretty good. Good ergonomics. Good size handle. You can get all 4 fingers on it in hammer grip position. Cuts and slices really, really well. So this is a knife that you probably want to have in your collection if you like small pocket knives. And the other thing about this knife is that it's very, very thin. If you look at this knife compared to my Kizer Leave, very thin like the Kizer Leave. Obviously not as thin as the Volt. The Volt's a little bit more rugged and thicker and more durable, but it's also thinner than the next 2 knives I'm going to be reviewing. And the only difference between the standard version of the Leak, which by the way, this knife comes in so many different blade finishes and so many different handle colors and styles. It comes in orange, it comes in blue, it comes in olive green, it comes in gray. You can get it in full polished stainless steel. So there's a ton of options out there for this knife. I have more than 2 of these, but I just showed you kind of the basic, everyday US made Leak, and then the nicer carbon fiber version of the same knife. Great knife, awesome pocket carry. It kind of bridges that gap between the small knives and the slightly bigger knives. But this is not going to be a heavy work knife because it does have a pretty thin blade profile. So next we're going to move on to the Civivi Pintail. Now, if you're not familiar with Civivi, I put this knife in the review specifically because I wanted to kind of show off what Civivi is all about. So Civivi is part of We Cutlery over in the Far East. They are a pretty established company. And Civivi is WE's pocket, everyday carry pocket type knife that they put out. They make a lot of different knives. This knife is pretty cool. It is not an assisted open. It's a flipper, but it opens beautifully, mostly because it uses ball bearings on both sides here. And another cool thing about this knife is that it uses an S35VN steel blade with a stainless steel frame. It's all satin finished on the inside. If you look at it, it also is skeletonized here to take some weight out of the knife. It has great lockup, as you can see. The lockup on the knife is really nice. Everything's just, every little detail is great on this knife. They finished all the little spacers off. It has good, nice micarta on it. They call this tan green. It looks kind of olive colored, but it has just enough texturing to be worthwhile. You've got your lanyard loop, which I don't personally use, but I know a lot of people do. Deep pocket carry clip, some jimping on the back. The knife's got good ergonomics. It's a little on the small side. This fourth finger doesn't really make it onto the handle completely for me, and I have what would be considered medium to medium large size hands. The knife fit and finish there's nothing I can say negative about these knives. They're a great value. However, I do have one small issue with this knife. So this knife opens with a flipper tab quickly and solidly. The thumb tab is a no-no on a knife like this for me. If your knife opens with one hand and you don't have to use a thumb tab, then there's absolutely no reason to have this. All this really does is create something else for you to catch your fingers or whatever on. Now, if the knife opens by thumb stud only, great, that's super, but I really don't feel like that's a necessity on a knife like this. It's so smooth and so well made and opens so well, it doesn't really need a thumb stud. But again, this is a Civivi Pintail, S35 steel, very high-end steel, made by Crucible Industries, and it's a great value. When I tell you what this knife costs at the end, you'll be shocked because there's so many features built into this knife, including the high-end super steel, that it's an amazing value. So if you're not familiar with Civivi knives, definitely give them a look. The knife also does come with this case, comes on all their knives. You get a case, you get a microfiber cleaning cloth, your warranty information, a little Civivi sticker of whatever your actual knife is. That's kind of a cool little feature. And comes with a fully closable nylon case. So again, Civivi Pintail, check them out if you've never looked at any of their knives. Finally, I'm going to go to the last knife in this review. And this knife is by Benchmade. This is the Benchmade Mini Boost. Now, I have to disclose that prior to this knife, I had never purchased any really expensive pocket knives. I typically bought knives that were in this range over here, in the $30 to $50 range, and I would just use those knives until, I broke the blades, chipped them, wore them out, whatever, they got loose, and then I would just kind of move on to something else that costs 30 to 50 bucks and keep going. I bought this knife a few years ago because I really wanted to see what premium knives were all about. So this is, again, the Benchmade Mini Boost. It has Benchmade's axis deployment, assisted deployment. So this knife has a couple of really cool features to it. It uses an S30V blade. You can see that right there. I got this knife in partially serrated, and then the fine edge here. It is a flat grind knife as well. You do use the thumb studs to actually deploy the blade. That's the only way the blade is deployed, so I have no issues with that. The access system does lock the knife. It cannot be unlocked unless you pull back on this button and then close the blade. Again, it's an assisted deployed knife. It does have a lock up here as well. So if you're really doing a lot of hard work with it and you don't want to accidentally hit the access button, you can lock this forward, and then this button cannot be moved. You cannot close this knife without taking the safety lock off. The only issue I really have with this knife as far as function is that it cannot be closed with one hand. Now, as far as other features that it has, I mentioned the blade being S30, basically at the beginning of the super steel type blades. It has great texturing. All of this black here is rubberizing, and then it has like a pebbled plastic finish in the middle. So all this black stuff you see is all rubbery. So the grip on this knife is amazing. You're not going to lose this knife. It's not going to slip out of your hands when it's wet. You're going to really get a good purchase on it. I wish it had a little bit more beef right here for putting your finger on there. But again, ergonomically, it's a great little knife in the compact series. You can see you can get all 4 fingers on there for the most part. It does have a stainless steel frame, and the fit and finish on the Benchmade knives is absolutely spectacular. It's a really, really solid knife. I love how they use the gray and the black, and the theme of the knife is really well. I have carried this a good bit, have cut and sliced with it a good bit, and it is definitely a great option. It's a smaller knife. It's right on the edge of being outside the compact zone. But again, Benchmade Mini Boost with access lock. So that pretty much wraps up my review of my favorite small pocket carry knives. And then we're going to talk about cost here now that I've reviewed all the knives. So from lowest to highest, we've got the Gerber Paraframe. This knife is a little under 30 bucks. We've got the Kershaw Volt II. This is $40. We've got the Kizer Leave, which is $45. We've got the Kershaw Leak. So the standard version of this knife is between 45 and 50 bucks, depending upon which blade options and scale options you get on it. And then the carbon fiber version, which is the top of the line version of the Leak, this knife is $80. So then we get to the Civivi, which I mentioned in the review, is a great knife for the money. And the Civivi is $85. And why is that such an amazing buy? Because you're getting S35 VN steel blade for $85. And typically that is only found on much, much more expensive knives. So again, the workmanship, the fit and finish of this Civivi for $85, that's a lot of knife. And the blade of the knife is pretty much everything, right? I mean, that's what you're cutting with, that's what you're slicing with. So the S35 VN blade on a knife like this for about 80 to 85 bucks is a great value. And then finally, we have the Kershaw Mini Boost. I mean, the Benchmade Mini Boost. What can I say? The Benchmades they're all great knives. The fit, finish, and quality on all these knives is amazing. This is a very, very well-made knife. It does come in the box with a little pouch, a little Benchmade pouch to put the knife in when you're not using it. And it's certainly worth the price. This knife currently sells for around $140. Is this knife far superior to the Civivi? I can't say that it is. There are some ergonomics on this knife that are a little better. I wish this knife closed with one hand. You need 2 hands to close this knife. That's kind of a Debbie Downer for me when it comes to everyday pocket carry knives. So I don't know if I could justify that much of a difference in price between the Civivi and the Benchmade. But again, the Benchmade is made in the United States. The Civivi is made overseas. So a couple of other options if you're looking at these knives and you're thinking, gee, what if I only have 30 bucks to spend for a knife? I wouldn't buy the Gerber Paraframe again. There's just some durability issues with this knife. Some other knives I would look at. This is the Kershaw Shuffle 2. It's a non-assisted opening knife. It uses a Tanto blade. It has a bottle opener for opening your beer bottles. It has a screwdriver tip on the end. It's a pretty cool little knife. You can get a pretty good grip on this thing. You can actually get all 4 fingers on it. So I give an honorable mention to this. The other knife that I think is really, really solid for $30 or less is the CRKT Squid. I don't actually have a squid here to show you, but it's on my list of inexpensive knives to purchase. So in closing, I think the Civivi and the Benchmade are great options if you are willing to spend a little bit more for premium steel on a knife and you're looking for a few extra features. If you're at the lower end of the scale, like I said, the Volt II is an amazing knife. It's a lot more knife than it looks like for the price point that it's at, around 40 bucks. And if you're looking for just kind of that, put it in your pocket and use it for a lot of different types of things, but you're not putting a lot of heavy torque on the knife, I think the Leak is a fantastic knife as well. These knives, they just really, really perform excellent. So again, it really depends on what you like in a knife. One other thing I would note, with the exception of the Gerber, is that I prefer tip down carry knives, tip up carry knives. I prefer my knife to be carried like this with the tip up. I'm not a tip down carry fan, and I'll tell you why that is. Because with tip up, I basically take the knife out of my pocket like this. I already have my hand on the grip like this. I deploy the knife, it's ready to be used. I only have to make one small adjustment to my hand. Knives that are carried the other way, you have to move your hand 2 times before you can actually deploy the knife for any cutting or self-defense or whatever it might be that you're doing. But again, good selection of knife, good range, price-wise, all the way from $30 up to $140. There's definitely some choices here. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more videos and reviews by me, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and stay sharp.